I bought my first GoPro in 2011 and it was kind of a mess. Even though it was capable of filming at 1080p, the image quality was pretty mushy and the colors weren't great. There was no image stabilization, so micro jitters were a major problem. And the camera itself was super delicate and had to be used inside this protective housing to actually be durable and waterproof. And in fact, of all of my GoPros, this is the only one that no longer works. It just sort of like died several years ago. As you can see on the back, settings and options were extremely limited. There was no screen on the back to check your framing or review footage. There's no real way to even navigate menus. This little tiny LCD screen on the front basically just let you know that the camera was on and recording and gave you some very basic menu navigation, and that is it. Because the whole idea behind this was that you basically just take this super wide angle camera, mount it on something, do whatever it is you're doing, and then see what the camera happened to film. And despite all of these shortcomings, I absolutely loved this camera. I cannot tell you how much fun I had with this thing. And every year since this, GoPros have just gotten better and better with more features and more capabilities and better image quality and better build quality. And other manufacturers have made cameras that rival or even outperform them in some ways. And now we've reached a point where for a couple $100, you can get a camera that has extremely high resolution, incredible image quality, unreal image stabilization, oodles and oodles of quality of life features, and all this other kind of magical stuff. And for the most part, a lot of us just kind of complain about them. We start nitpicking all the ways that these relatively cheap cameras don't rival or outperform something like a dedicated cinema camera. But I'm pretty sure if I could show the Hero 12 or any modern action camera, a DJI or Insta360 or whatever, to my previous self from 2011, that my head would just never stop exploding. A big thanks to GoPro for sending me the Hero 12, but I don't have to make a video about it or say anything about it. I just really like making videos about GoPros, and it's always fun to check out a new one. But I do feel like the Hero 12 specifically needs a bit of contextualization to be totally understood. So here's the whole spoiler. The whole thesis behind this video is that the GoPro Hero 12 is the best GoPro yet, but if you already have a GoPro or similar action camera released in the last couple of years, you probably don't need to upgrade to it. And let's switch to the Hero 12 in this environment as I go through the rest of my spoiler upfront conclusions here. So now you are seeing and hearing me on the GoPro Hero 12, and I tried really hard to match the framing as closely as possible to my Sony FX3. So I am using the linear lens mode. I'm using GoPro Log, which is new on the Hero 12, and I tried to just adjust the ISO and everything to match my Sony FX3, but of course it's a very different camera. This camera, the GoPro, is like half the sales tax of the Sony FX3, so maybe expecting them to have the exact same image quality might be a little unreasonable, but this is what it looks like, this is what it sounds like. And now if I switch back over to the audio from my Sennheiser MKH50, we've got the video from the GoPro Hero 12 and the audio from the Sennheiser MKH50. And it's kind of interesting to see how these cameras perform in a studio type environment, because one question I've been getting a lot of is how well does a GoPro work as a webcam or as like a podcast camera, a studio camera? And that is something that's probably worth an entirely separate video because it's a big topic, but I think it's a really fun topic to explore. But for the sake of this video, this overview, this broad review of the GoPro Hero 12, like I said before I switched to this camera, if you already have a relatively new action camera, you probably don't need to upgrade to this. You can still have as much fun and get as much use out of your current camera as you have been. For GoPro specifically, when the Hero 10 was announced a few years ago, I said that this was the perfect GoPro, a perfect 10. And I kind of stand by that. The form factor, along with the faster processing inside, combined with the image quality, made this just like everything that I wanted a GoPro to be when I originally bought one. And so I thought the 10 was basically perfect. The 11 added some new features to the 10. It added the full sensor, that was a big one, but it's a relatively incremental upgrade. And the 12 is kind of the same thing. It's a relatively incremental upgrade from the 11. So especially if you have a GoPro 10 or an 11, the 12 is not going to be a huge game changer. But if you have something before the 10, a 9 or anything earlier, you know how numbers work, less than 10, then you'll notice a huge leap forward with the Hero 12 in terms of image quality, usability, and just, quality of life features. And of course, in the case of GoPros, being able to use the same batteries, the same accessories, the same mounts and cases and all that stuff across many generations of the camera is a really helpful thing as someone who has spent a lot of money on GoPros and GoPro accessories over the years, like an action camera Hank Hill. So this video is not going to be a full tech breakdown on the GoPro Hero 12. It's been out for a while. People have done better jobs than I could ever do. My video is more of an overview and contextualization of the Hero 12. But I do know, let's go back to the GoPro. I do know that overheating is always a hot button issue with GoPros. So I did do some overheating tests between the Hero 12, 11, and 10. And while I'm not doing anything crazy scientific here, these results are at 5.3K resolution on all three cameras, 24 frames per second with image stabilization turned on, and the ambient temperature was 97 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 36 degrees Celsius. So it's a pretty hot day and they're in direct sunlight. So in that situation, the Hero 10 lasted 14 minutes and 50 seconds before overheating. The Hero 11 lasted 17 minutes and 7 seconds before overheating. And the Hero 12 lasted 15 minutes and 45 seconds. So it actually lasted less than the 11. But that was also a pretty extreme situation where the cameras were like melting in the sun. GoPro's own tests are done at 77 degrees Fahrenheit and also with at least, I think it's a 6 mile per hour wind, because they don't expect you to leave the camera stationary in the sun. It's supposed to be an action camera. It's like moving and doing stuff, and when the air is blowing over the camera, it helps cool it down. So I let all three cameras cool down, and then I put them in the shade with a fan blowing on them and did the test again. And this time the Hero 10 lasted 55 minutes and 6 seconds. The Hero 11 lasted exactly 1 hour, and the Hero 12 lasted 55 minutes and 39 seconds. So in both versions of my very not scientific test, the Hero 11, this one, was actually the best performing camera, even though the Hero 12 is listed to have a longer runtime and a longer thermal. It's not supposed to overheat as fast. The Hero 12 did use less battery power. The 10 and 11 were much closer to actually running out of battery, whereas the Hero 12 in all cases overheated before it could come close to running out of battery power. So for all intents and purposes, looking at those results, while they are different, they're also pretty much the same. In direct sunlight, you're gonna get about 15 minutes. In the shade with a fan running at a high resolution with image stabilization on still kind of a warmer ambient temperature day, you're gonna get about 55 minutes, maybe a little bit more. So this, plan for that. If that doesn't work for you, if you need 4 hours of continuous recording in hot environments at high resolutions, this camera is not for you. But for me, and from what I've read statistically, the majority of GoPro customers, most of us don't record for more than 15 minutes at a time. And I know a lot of my clips are usually just a couple of minutes or even just a couple of seconds at a time. So being able to get 15 minutes in extreme situations to an hour in less extreme situations is more than enough for me and my needs. Now, as we go throughout this video, I will share as much sample footage and comparisons as I can, but there are a few other things I want to touch on. So while the Hero 12 is super similar to the 11, there are a few key differences, and while most people probably don't need to upgrade from the 11 to the 12, if one of the specific new features to the 12 is very important to you, then that could make the upgrade really worthwhile. I'm going to talk about these in no particular order, starting with HDR Video, which is essentially, well, it is high dynamic range video, and that's a setting you can turn on and off in the GoPro Hero 12, so you don't always have to shoot with HDR video. I actually like it quite a bit, and what that really means is if you look at a scene like this that has a lot of bright spots and a lot of dark spots, it's going to look a little more even than either having something super dark or something super bright. Now, almost at the other end of the spectrum, the Hero 12 lets you film in log footage with GP log, and it might seem sort of strange because it's like, oh, you have log footage and you have HDR footage. They almost seem like they're competing features in a way, but really a good way to look at it is that HDR footage is a great way to get like really good looking footage out of the camera without having to do anything to it. So it's kind of the simplest, no fuss, no muss workflow. The log footage which is like what I was using during the talking head portion of this video earlier, is a really great choice if you're planning to dive into color grading or dealing with the exposure in a more specific way on the GoPro. And that is really helpful if you are trying to match it to other cameras. So if you're trying to mix GoPro footage in with something like, the FX3, then working with that log footage is going to give you a lot more versatility, and that's going to help you match those cameras so that it's not a jarring cut when you go between one high-end cinema camera to the GoPro and back and forth. Now, one pretty interesting new feature is the ability to connect Bluetooth headphones to the GoPro Hero 12 and also use them as a microphone. You can also use voice commands that way, so if the camera's really far away, you can tell it when to start and stop recording and stuff just through your earbuds. The quality of the audio when you do this is not quite on the same level as the built-in regular microphone on the GoPro, and it's definitely, no one's gonna be like, whoa, are you recording with a Sennheiser MKH50 in your GoPro right now? But it at least kind of gets the job done. So now I've got the GoPro mounted on the hood of my car. I'm using my AirPods Pro. No, they're just regular AirPods. I'm not a pro. But this is a GoPro, and we're gonna see how the AirPods sound. One thing I'm noticing watching the GoPro in front of me is that it is bouncing around like crazy every bump I go over in the car. So it's a good test of the stabilization, which I think should perform pretty well. A question you might have is, how is this better than just mounting the GoPro inside the car in the windshield to get a car view? And the answer is, I don't know. I guess the point of this is that the camera is not in the car. There's a barrier of glass, there's wind noise, there's all kinds of stuff in the camera's environment, but hopefully you should still be able to hear me. I am definitely a little bit dubious over what this audio quality is going to be like. I have a feeling it's going to maybe sound like a bad Zoom call or something, but hey, it's at least something that's possible, and that is pretty cool. So now, I gotta buy some bread yeast at Walmart, so that's what I'm here. One very nice quality of life upgrade to the Hero 12 is that it does have a native quarter 20 mount just built right into the bottom in between the little fingers here, which is great. So you can use all of your existing GoPro accessories, or you can take a tripod or something with a quarter 20 mount, and then you can just screw that directly into the bottom of the camera without needing any other mounts, adapters, or accessories, and then you're good to go. Good to go pro. And I really like this. Now, the GoPro Hero 11 introduced full frame sensor, not full frame like Sony FX3, but it's a big square 8x7 sensor, and you can record using that whole thing, so that way you can crop in horizontally or vertically without losing any resolution. The Hero 12 makes that a little bit smoother by adding in native vertical recording. So if you want to use your GoPro for vertical recording and you don't want to have to then do the 8x7 and crop in afterwards, you can just record vertically natively with the GoPro and then upload it there, which is great if you're doing any kind of vertical video or social media or whatever. It's a small thing that makes the workflow better. Feels like something that could probably be added into even the 10, right? With firmware, but it's not at this point, so it's only in the Hero 12. The Hero 12 also allows you to use Max Lens Mod 2.0. Now, I've never used any mods on my GoPro before now, but this is pretty fun. This is the widest field of view I can get with the GoPro, which is still pretty freaking wide. Like, you can see, I have the camera not very far in front of me, but you can see all this part of the room. You can see a lot of space here. This is pretty darn wide, but Max Lens Mod 2.0 makes it even wider. So this is Super View, and this is Hyper View with the Max Lens Mod 2.0. You can basically see, it's a 180-degree camera almost. I mean, like, the fact you can even see my hand, which is holding the camera on the side, you can still see my hand, is pretty insane. This has been really fun to use. I like this a lot. One thing to note though, and I found out the hard way, is that you cannot use this in webcam mode currently. If you have the Max Lens mod on, but you don't have Max Lens mod 2.0 mode enabled, this is what it looks like, this very like Beastie Boys fisheye view. And if you're using the GoPro as a webcam, this is what it's going to look like when you have the Max Lens mod enabled. I tried to do it for a live stream a while ago and it ended up looking like this. I ended up keeping it for the stream because I thought it looked cool. I had it over here like a studio fisheye camera. But it's just something to be aware of, that currently you can't use Max Lens Mod 2.0 when the GoPro is in webcam mode. And if you're like me and you've never used a Max Lens mod or any mod like that before, it basically just turns and then pops on and off the camera, and then you can put the regular lens back on, which is also really nice because you can then swap out lenses. This is same for the 10, 11, and 12. If your lens were to get broken, scratched, or cracked or whatever, you can just swap that out really easily. This is what the GoPro Hero 12 looks like with Max Lens Mod 2.0, which from what I understand is the widest field of view ever on any GoPro so far. And it's pretty insane because it's basically 180 degrees. Like, you can see the top of the windshield, which is essentially directly above the GoPro where I have it mounted. You can see the whole car. You can awkwardly see my legs. That's uncomfortable. This is also just the built-in microphone on the GoPro with, car noise. I have the air conditioner on a little bit, so this is what the built-in audio sounds like. Something I've appreciated with recent GoPros is it seems like the audio gets better and better each time. And in fact, I've actually been curious how the built-in audio compares to a more dedicated external audio source. There, now you can see both of us. So we are outdoors.
We're outdoors.
We're talking. I'm just holding the GoPro, and this is what it sounds like with the built-in microphone. And the thing I want to try is to see if the Media Mod mic makes a difference, because in the reviews I've seen for this, it sounds not as good with this.
Doesn't sound as good with the mic.
So we'll see. I know. So this is the built-in one. There are cars over there, and this is with the built-in mic. And now this is with the Media Mod microphone. So this is what it sounds like.
This is with the microphone.
Yes. Does it sound better? Does it sound worse? Everything else?
The same.
Everything else is exactly the same.
Everything else is the same.
I was listening to our audio from a couple of hours ago.
There's a lot of wind right now. Do you know that?
Well, it's good because this is all about audio right now.
Audio.
And when we used the Media Mod a few hours ago, I thought, not to color anybody's opinions who's watching this, but I thought that it sounded better without it. Which is good if you buy the camera, like the 11 or the 12 or the 10.
Watch the step.
They all have great audio without needing the Media Mod. And maybe if you have the 8 or 9, then the Media Mod's better, but I don't know. We'll see how this sounds, but I think this audio sounds better, and there's even a little wind, and there's noise, and we're walking, and it's also super bright, so, all right.
Yeah.
The Hero 12 also introduces timecode sync, which is a very helpful feature if you want to use a bunch of cameras and sync them all together, whether or not they're GoPros. As long as you have a timecode generator device, you can then sync everything up, and that's going to make your editing a lot easier. It's not something that I personally use a lot of, but I know there are a lot of situations where people have multiple GoPros recording at once, and being able to sync them all up super easily is really nice. So that's a cool quality of life feature for a lot of people. The 12 also has better battery life and overheating performance. Asterisk, I think, just like the 11, the 12 comes with the Enduro battery, which gives the GoPro Hero 12 more endurance when it comes to recording in hot and cold temperatures. I live in the desert, and I also spend a lot of time at an ice skating rink, so those are hot and cold situations, and the GoPro has worked fine. Like my test show, there's really no difference in the overheating performance in my climate, in my very hot environment, between the 10, 11, and 12. They're all essentially the same, but I have noticed that the Hero 12 does get better battery life, and I think a big reason for that is because it does not have GPS. So it's the first GoPro in a very long time to not have built-in GPS. The 10 and 11 both do. By removing that feature, then the camera is able to have better battery performance, and they're able to keep the cost down because the GoPro Hero 12 is $399 without needing a subscription or anything like that. So it kind of kept the cost there, improved battery life. I think it was supposed to improve thermal performance and overheating performance, but that to me didn't seem to really make a huge difference. I'm not somebody who has ever used GPS in any GoPro ever, so I don't mind that it's not there. But if you are somebody who's used it and relies on it, then that means the Hero 11 is probably still the best choice for you, and especially since the 12 is out, you might be able to find these for a little cheaper. So it could be a really good deal to just get the 11, especially if you need GPS. And speaking of batteries, the 12, 11, 10, and 9 all use the same batteries, which is really nice. So if you've already got some of those, you can keep using them. Even though the camera has improved battery life, GoPro batteries are relatively inexpensive, so it's always a good idea to just have a couple extra, charge them up, and that way you never have to worry about it, and you can just pop in a new battery anytime that you need it, and you're gonna be all set. Now there are also a lot of other little quality of life updates and small little features and menu updates and things, none of which I think are worth upgrading to the 12 specifically for, but they do make it a really nice experience. The touchscreen is very fluid and very responsive, which I like quite a bit. There's also the GoPro Hero Quick app, which has been around for a while, so you can use it on your phone. It's the main way that I transfer footage from the GoPro, just import it to the phone and then save it to photos or airdrop it or whatever. That's really nice. I have found that this seems to be more reliable lately, and it connects to all the different cameras really easily and really quickly. I used to get like connection errors pretty often. I haven't had that happen at all with the Hero 12 since the app's been updated for that. And you can finally monitor your camera while it's recording. Previously, you could see a live view from the camera, but as soon as you started recording, this would turn off and you couldn't see it anymore. Now you can see the live recording over here. But while it's one thing to talk about the Hero 12 in terms of features and specs, I really do want to see how it compares to all of my other GoPros in terms of image quality and stabilization. But it's surprisingly difficult to hold 6 cameras at one time, so I think in order to do this, I'm going to have to go produce something for the GoPros. Okay, so before we get to the comparison, the thing about GoPros is that they can make fairly normal activities really fun and over the top, like trying to build a GoPro comparison device that's pretty simple. So it's hard to resist having a little fun with it. Like, if I'm out in our backyard practicing hockey shots, this is what it's like. But with a GoPro, this is what it can feel like. So again, you can just have a ton of fun with these cameras. Now, let's get to the comparison. So here it is, the GoPro Comparison Encabulator 1.0. And now I can use all 6 of my working GoPros at the same time. So here is the GoPro Hero 12, and then I've also got 5 others also. So in terms of image quality, this is the 12. This right here is the 11. They're all on 24 frames per second on the wide field of view. This is the GoPro Hero 10 right here. This is the GoPro Hero 7. This is the Hero 5. And this is the Hero 3 Plus. This is the only one not on 4K. This is at 2.7K because that's its highest resolution. Now, I should also mention that each camera has a medium sharpness setting and natural color profile. I tried to make all the settings as even as possible throughout all of these cameras wherever I'm looking. Stabilization, also gonna be a fun thing. So let's do a little bit of running here. I'm shaking this as much as I can as I'm running. You can kind of see the different bits of stabilization and how they work and how well they do or don't work, I guess. I'm actually exaggerating my shaking, to be honest with you. This is a lot of shaking. I don't know what camera to look at. So as you can see, the stabilization really does make a world of difference. The 3 and the 5 definitely look quite rough. The 7 looks pretty decent, but the 10, 11, and 12 look great. And right here, you can see the 11 and 12 side by side. And the difference here is that I have auto stabilization boost turned on in the 12, which is basically because anytime you're using image stabilization on any camera, it has to crop in on the sensor to do whatever magic it does to keep things stable. What Auto Boost does is it keeps the widest field of view possible and then crops in only as needed based on how much stabilization the camera needs. And it does so very smoothly, so it's not like a jarring jump cut or anything. It's a very smooth thing. So as we look at the 11 and 12 side by side, they look pretty similar, but at times you can kind of notice that the 12 looks a little bit wider even though they're at the exact same settings, and that's because the image stabilization is able to go out a little bit when it doesn't need quite as much of it. And another thing you might have noticed in these comparisons is that in terms of just image quality, there's very little, if any, difference between the 10, 11, and 12. And that's something you would expect from these incremental updates, these evolutionary updates versus revolutionary updates. So let's talk about that really quick. I think incremental updates like this, whether it's GoPros or pretty much anything, are actually a really good thing, because even though you do lose out on the excitement of, oh my gosh, look at this totally new thing, like from the ground up every year, what you end up with is then you can have a several generations old device that's still plenty good, and you don't feel the need every single year to like, oh, I'm really missing out, I really need to upgrade that thing. But at the same time, if you're just jumping in, you're going to get the best version of a thing at any given time. So I think that is definitely a win-win. And while we're talking about GoPros and the Hero 12, it's definitely worth asking, what about other action cameras? This is very much my own personal opinion, and I fully admit that I'm biased because I prefer GoPros. I always have. That's the thing I bought back in 2011. It's the thing I still love and use now, but there are other great options out there, specifically from Insta and DJI being kind of like the top competitors. Insta360 makes some of the most fun cameras to use, and they are my camera of choice when it comes to something that's a little more complicated like 360 video, because they've done such a great job at taking that really complicated thing that can be a nightmare to do and making it really simple and actually fun to work with. So when it comes to 360 video, Insta360, as the name implies, is definitely like my favorite camera to use, and they are just a ton of fun. But in terms of image quality, they don't compare at all to any of the newer GoPros. The other popular option, of course, being the DJI Osmo Action, which looks very GoPro-like, and in recent years has gotten closer and closer and even surpasses the GoPro in some things like overheating. I've personally never used the DJI Osmo Action cameras because I really don't like DJI as a company, and I kind of stick with them only when I have no alternative, like a gimbal or a drone where I need something easy and reliable, I'll go with DJI. But if it's an action camera or a microphone or whatever where there's plenty of great alternatives, I just never use the DJI version of the thing. I'd like to wrap things up by talking about a few personal pet peeves of mine, and I really hope this doesn't sound too ranty. And throughout this video, you've seen a lot of footage of my dogs. If one of them was named Peeve, it would literally be my pet peeve. But I really want to make sure we adjust our expectations reasonably when it comes to action cameras like this, because I see so much criticism and it seems like people forget how much fun you can have with a camera like this. I don't care if it's a GoPro or a DJI or an Insta or whatever. These kinds of cameras are so much fun to use and they let you do really cool things. As a customer, you should always want the best possible version of something, and you should want to make sure that the thing you buy and spend your money on actually does everything that it says it can do. And the GoPros do that. The thing where it seems like people get upset is because they don't do a bunch of stuff that they never said they could do in the first place. They are not cinema cameras. And even though there are a lot of cool features we would like to see in cameras like this, reality is a thing. The laws of thermodynamics are a thing. For example, one thing that I've heard people asking for in GoPros for a number of years is a bigger sensor. I would personally love a bigger sensor because it would give you better image quality, it would give you better low light performance. None of these cameras are still particularly great in low light at all. That's definitely not their strength. But a bigger sensor also generates more heat. So when you have a camera that's already dealing with trying to expel and reduce as much heat as possible, introducing more heat is not going to solve that problem, because having a waterproof, shockproof camera also means then that it's not really great at dissipating heat. It kind of traps everything inside. So wanting more heat generating stuff inside a small, not heat dissipating body, those are just things that don't go together well. And I think that's something to keep in mind when you're buying a camera like this, is it is designed to accommodate a wide variety of users. And for the most part, it covers most people's needs really well. And I know it's really frustrating when a camera or anything doesn't do what you want it to do, but I just think it's really important to keep in mind what it's supposed to do and what it's intended to do versus what you're asking it to do, because sometimes those aren't in alignment, I've noticed, and then people get really upset. I don't know if you know this about the internet, but people have a lot of opinions and they get upset about things. But you know what doesn't make me upset? Everybody who helps support my channel through Patreon and YouTube channel memberships, I really appreciate you. My videos are also made possible by everyone who's enrolled in one of my 3 online courses, so if you want to learn how to podcast or sharpen your Final Cut Pro editing skills, check out himynameistom.com/courses, where everything is self-paced, regularly updated, and includes lifetime access.